You're watching The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales, streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. New series on Disney Plus. We're going to talk about it today. First 2 episodes are out. First one last week, but I wasn't here to ill. So we're going to talk about the first 2 episodes right now here on the Dan Wickline Show. Stay tuned. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. We are back, and I know I was out last week because I was ill. I'm not 100% yet, but we're going to do our best here. We are going to talk about the new Miss Marvel series. It debuted last week, and then episode 2 dropped last night. And it's a pretty interesting show. I should probably start with the caveat. I am not that familiar with the character. I mean, I know the basics. I know that in the comics, she was part of the Terrigen Bomb. She's an Inhuman. She has stretchy powers. Hey, cool gamer. So I know the basics of her, and I know that we've got some pretty big changes between what they did in the comics and what we're doing now, which I'm good with, because the Inhumans are still an interesting subject in the Marvel Universe. I know if you saw Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we did get a alternate reality version of Black Bolt, who, of course, is the head of the Inhumans and the one who actually launched the Terrigen Bomb in the comics. So there is the possibility, we're probably going to get Inhumans again eventually. Yeah, Josh, the episode 2 was last night. I won't get into what happened in episode 2 until a little later, and I'll put the spoiler border up for that. So we'll talk a little bit about issue 1, their episode 1, and some of the changes. So if you want to skip spoilers, you can hang out for a bit, and I'll let you know when to bail. But yeah, so the Inhumans are an interesting beast in the MCU because of, the fighting between Marvel Television and Marvel Studios, or the Kevin Feige, which really came down to a fight between Kevin Feige and Ron Perlman. When Perlman was still trying to control things, he wanted to do an Inhumans movie. It ended up becoming a TV series. I'll be out like the Terrigen Mist. Thanks for the warning. So there was it wasn't something Kevin Feige wanted to do. Like I said, it was originally announced as a movie, and then it got moved to a TV series. And then when the series came out, they took the first 2 episodes and released them in IMAX, so you could see those, which I did. Yeah, not that Ron Perlman. JD, a different Ron Perlman. No, Ike Perlman. I guess I mentioned I'm still kind of under the weather, right? Yeah. The Inhumans TV series had a group of actors that were trying their absolute best to perform some hideously written scripts. I mean, they were acting their asses off. Anson Mount, Serinda Swan, just down the line. The people that they cast did about as good a job as they could do with utter garbage. Yeah, JD knows I'm skating around naming the showrunner because I think he's one of the worst. And it's tough for me to say. I usually don't go after people like that. Being a writer myself, I know you can get best intentions and all that, but the guy has consistently been bad, so, and hasn't worked since that I've seen. But so yeah, I was fairly sure we would never have any ties to that series, that it would never come up in anything MCU. And I think everybody involved in it felt the same way. You know, I mean, Anson Mount has gone on to star as Captain Johnny Bravo or Captain Pike on the new Star Trek series, and JD got that joke. So it was surprising to see Black Bolt pop up. Now, Black Bolt is part of the Illuminati, so that made sense, having the character there. Miss Marvel's the topic today, J.D. Smith. So I was surprised to see that, but it didn't surprise me that the Kamala Khan or Miss Marvel isn't that tied into the Inhumans story. But I think that in what they've done is, if you follow the line, the Inhumans are directly tied to the Kree. The Inhumans were Kree experiments. So it would make sense that her powers tie into the Kree. And since the plan is to have her show up in the Marvels movie, it would make sense to tie her closely into Kree tech, Kree stuff like that, because that's going to be Captain Marvel or the Marvels. So yeah, so it didn't surprise me that they changed her power base. Now, of course, in the comics, she has stretchy powers, like you see on the comic over here. Yeah, she's got basically Reed Richards powers. What they're giving her now is what they're calling hard light. And she's able to make hard light constructs similar to the way the Green Lantern works his ring. Now, to me, that's pretty interesting because we know there's going to be a Fantastic Four movie coming up. So we're going to get a character with stretchy powers. Giving her the ring and stuff, the way she uses her powers has always been to elongate and embiggen. The word she uses is embiggen. Her hands, her feet, stuff like that, which she could just as easily do Green Lantern style. So I thought that was a pretty interesting and pretty sensical change. You know, it made a lot of sense. But again, this was all moving forward before I think they even knew they were playing Black Bolt in. I kind of get the feeling that Black Bolt and Mr. Fantastic being in Doctor Strange were kind of last minute things. It kept changing on who it was going to be. I had heard for a long time it was going to be Balder. You know, Balder the Brave, Thor's brother, and it was going to be played by Daniel Craig, which would have also been interesting. I wonder what accent he would have done for that. Because I think of Knives Out and that accent. And if you just tell him, okay, you're doing this part, and you let him choose his own accent, you don't know what the hell he's going to come up with. By the way, I like the title for the second Knives Out movie, Glass Onion. I think that has a lot of neat connotation to it. You know. JD says, I really think that scene was just fan service with no effect on the future of iterations. Mostly, I agree. I don't think we're going to see Patrick Stewart in the MCU regularly. But there's a really good reaction to Captain Carter. So I could see them trying to do something with that character. We've got Monica Rambeau. We've got Carol Danvers. I don't think we need another Captain Marvel. So I don't see that character. Will we? I think it'll be a while before we get to the Inhumans. But we are getting a Fantastic Four. And I know throwing John Krasinski in there when everybody wants John Krasinski, that's tempting fate, I think. I think if they don't cast Krasinski, there might be some backlash. We'll see on that. But so yeah, going into the series, I thought it was some interesting changes. But also I knew that this was going to be a different series for the MCU. This was very focused on her life, her culture, being a teenager. It was, I don't know if I want to call it a YA story. Mainly because I don't think I, off the top of my head, know what makes it a YA story. They throw terms around there a lot. I look at it as, I compare it to other things that came out. It's got a similar feel to Spider-Man No Way Home. And very similar to Scott Pilgrim's versus the World. That's what I think that I like in this series too, is kind of living in that zone between the two of them. And I thought, well, it'll get more serious when bad guys show up. But maybe not. I don't know. It won't get too serious. It won't suddenly become Moon Knight, you know. It won't suddenly become, Hawkeye or whatever. It's going to keep its younger skewing, which is fine. So, but the first episode dropped last week. And I think the opening sequence really set the tone in a very unique way. And again, it had a feel of like the Spider-Man movies. But when we get the recap of the Thanos battle done in little paper miniatures, I thought that was really clever. I thought that really tied it into the MCU, but also did it setting its own tone. It's kind of like, yeah, we exist where all this stuff happened. We're showing you this, but we're showing you in a way that shows you what we are. Josh says, I'd be comfortable calling it YA. It's like a really glowed up Disney Channel show. That's not a bad thing. Yeah. That's a good one, Josh. Yeah. It is definitely, glowed up. I think it'll be more interesting to see how the character evolves into the Marvels movie than how she's going to be here. I mean, if you think about it, the Marvels is going to take Captain Marvel from the Captain Marvel movie, who is very serious, Monica Rambeau from the WandaVision series, which had its humor but was mostly serious. And then Kamala Khan. It's an interesting blend they're going to have to pull that off. I'll be curious to see just how it works. But I think it's a neat idea. But no, I really liked the opening credits. But also, I think in the opening credits, it answered something that a lot of people have been wondering, which is ever since those movies, it seems like a lot of these just street folk know what happened in the battle with Thanos in Endgame. And it's like, well, how? How does everybody know this? Well, it turns out it's because Scott talks too much. Scott Lang has a podcast and talks about the battle. And it's hard to tell whether he just goes on and talks about it or if he goes on and he interviews other heroes and other people involved. I kind of got the feeling he was interviewing other people involved too. So whenever we see somebody who talks about, I did love the title, yeah. So I did think that answers that question, like, how are Agent Jimmy and Darcy arguing over how Captain Marvel did against Thanos and Wanda? How do they even know that? Well, it's because Scott Lang's podcast. And I could totally see Scott doing a podcast of any Marvel character. Ant-Man would absolutely do the podcast. Totally. So I think that's one of the things that comes out of the credits. But the credits really just kind of sets the tone for the series, which... And then we go into basically this YA story of her trying to get a driver's license and trying to get her life together and hanging out with her buddy Bruno, who is way more intelligent than any kid should be. I mean, he shouldn't be at Caltech. He should be working with like the think tanks and stuff, Stark Enterprises, But his buddy Bruno. Another thing I liked is the fact that there are other characters, like her friend we meet in episode 2. We briefly touch on her, but don't really spend much time with her because we're focused on Kamala and Bruno in the first episode and Avengers Con. And I love that there's an Avengers Con. That is not a Comic-Con. It's people getting together because, they're fans of the Avengers. Fans of the people who just saved the world. That makes a ton of sense. And people in costumes and, that just, and having it at Camp Lehigh was another great touch. But, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. The family dynamic I thought was interesting. I don't know a lot about Pakistani culture. Which I'm finding fascinating. Some of it we see in movies and stuff. But I mean, in episode 2, and this is not a spoiler, they talk about some history where India gets divided up and the mess that England leaves them in. And that's a huge, major moment in that area's history, which I don't think I've ever had come up in any other show or movie, let alone brought forth by the people who lived it. So that, I thought, is a real nice touch and something they can do in this series. So, all right, we'll continue with this in just a second. We need to take our first commercial break. So we'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk more about episode 1, and then I'll throw the spoilers up, and we'll talk about episode 2. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Get the inside scoop on everything happening at the experience every week. Join our mailing list by scanning the QR code at the bottom of the screen and then watching your email inbox.
Comic Collectibles is here for you every Wednesday with AR Comics for 2 very important reasons: to sell you rare, one-of-a-kind comics that you'll love, and to confuse AR with old man talk. You see, Rex and John are, how should I put this, ancient as the roots of the mountains. So every week, Rex and John fill in AR in yet another area of pop culture that he missed because he's too young, just didn't have the time, or just really doesn't care about. It's a real public service they provide. Come buy some super rare and unique comics, while old men explain long-dead sci-fi shows to a younger man making that confused puppy face. Every Wednesday from 6 to 8 Eastern with Rex, John, and AR Comics. Comic Collectibles on The Experience. Comic culture and sales.
There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com to find a store near you.
Are you a comic creator? Are you a publisher? Do you make a comic book product? Do you own a retail store? Do you do something I haven't thought of? Who are you and what do you do? Let us know by advertising on The Experience and invite our viewers to patronize your product. Message the EXP on social media or email us _EXP@yahoo.com for more details.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. 2 things real quick before we get back into the conversation. One is we have a new pick of the week. I pointed out a minute ago. This is Champions #1 from Marvel. It's a little bit older now, but it's got Amadeus Cho, Miss Marvel, Night Thrasher, Vision, Nova, and Cyclops in it. It was a new team they put together. This is actually the John Cassidy exclusive cover from Dynamic Forces that I picked up recently. And they still have copies of this. They also have a black and white version that is very cool. So if you are looking to get some comics with Miss Marvel in it, check this one out. You can check your local retailer, or for this particular cover, you got to go to dynamicforces.com. All right. Also, it was announced yesterday that my graphic novel, Karma, that we did a Kickstarter for recently, was picked up by Dynamite and will be offered in the July previews. I think that's right. So the upcoming previews will have Karma in it. And I've got one of them here. Now, we're using the Stepan Sedgwick cover, but this was the one I had handy. This is the Michael D. Pascal cover. But all the covers are in the back, so you will see this at least in the back of the book. These, the Kickstarter is done and we fulfilled, but we're now offering them up through Diamond. They will be in Amazon. They will be in comic shops, bookstores. So if you did not get a chance to pick it up through the Kickstarter, you got a second chance now. Coming this, in the next preview catalog, it'll be shipping in September. So, thank you, Josh. All right, I like Josh wrote about Avengers AvengerCon part. My girlfriend very excitedly asked, "Are conventions really like that?" I sadly had to reply, "No." I think conventions are much bigger and more spread out, so they don't have that party feel. But most of the elements that are there in the episode are at conventions. Lots of cosplayers, lots of cosplay contests. Oh, by the way, the link for the Champions comic is in the chat right now if you want to get a copy. So, the whole episode, the main focus of the episode is them getting to Comic-Con or AvengerCon and her finishing her costume. And Bruno keeps saying you need to have something of you in it, something that makes it to you. And JD says conventions to me are like a big mall. Yep. Or a swap meet. I'm trying to remember my first convention. We're sidetracked real quick. First convention was in 1981. It was at the downtown LA at the Biltmore Hotel. It was in the basement. It was not that big. I remember there being one back row around, like a U-shaped row of retailers, and then like 3 row sets in between. And then all of the guests were at the front. And the guests that day that I remember, Walter Koenig from Star Trek, got his signature. Carolyn Monroe from Moonraker, got her signature. Jack Kirby got his signature a lot. I went up 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old. I went up with a signed copy, got it signed, talked to him for just a couple minutes. He seemed like the nicest guy on the planet. Then I ran around the convention center trying to buy other Jack Kirby comics. Ended up with all 15 issues of Black Panther. Ran back to get him to sign them. He was leaving. I caught him in the lobby, up the escalator in the lobby, where he took the time to sign each and every comic. Tiny little convention, but life-changing moment. I think I walked out of the convention that day going, I want to work in comics. These people are fantastic. I want to work in comics. Also, what I did was after that, anytime I bought a comic, I had a catalog that I kept that listed the title, Daredevil page, issue 1, the interior title, the writer, and the artist. And I kept track of that of every comic book I owned for a very long time. Now I have a huge collection, and I don't know what I have anymore. Yep, that was worth way more than a giant Ant-Man statue, yes. Or a giant Mjolnir. So, all right, so the first episode, like I said, we get back to it. Kamala has something that always bugs me in YA movies, in shows. And we see it in Harry Potter. Lying to adults. lying without consequences. It just seems to be a consistent thing, and I don't know why. But it's a thing. So, but yeah, so the whole thing is they're building up to that. And in all this is going on, her brother is getting married. And her nanny, which I assume is her grandmother on her mother's side, is sending things to them because she wants to do it before she passes away. And a box comes with this bracelet or bangle in it. And of course, Kamala sees it, thinks, that looks awesome. Her mom at that moment is like, that is garbage, and just shoves it in the thing. That's garbage. Takes a box upstairs. Just wants it out of there. And takes Kamala with her to go shopping suddenly. She's going to take the brother and suddenly takes Kamala. Now, so we get this idea that maybe there's something going on with the mom. Maybe there's a family history we don't know about. Well, of course we don't know about it. We just met the character. But maybe there's something going on. We also have these weird little moments with the mother. These moments that don't make logical sense. The first one is absolutely played for a laugh. When she comes home and Bruno's there setting up Zulu or Zuzu, and the mother says, well, I'll make you something really quick. And she's like, oh, you don't have to. And then like a second later, he turns around and she's there with this huge bag of food and talking about how one of the bottom ones has spice in it because somebody's particularly likes spice. It's like, wait, how did you... And he says, this is what I do. You do your electronic stuff. This is what I do. That was awful fast. But again, it could just be a mom joke. Okay. Later on, she asks the parents to go to VentureCon. They say no. Her brother steps in. They kind of come around, but they come around in their way. And overnight, her mother is able to make 2 full Hulk costumes and get the dad's makeup done. So when they wake up in the morning, they can do this little thing. Look, you're going to go big Hulk, little Hulk. You're going to go. And that was just way too quick. There's something going on there, it seems. Anyway, so Kamala, of course, says, no, that would be humiliating to go with my dad. And my heart broke for him at that point. Because he seems like the nicest guy ever. And my heart just absolutely broke for him. But we get the setup. She gets with Bruno. They get this elaborate plan. And that's when we start seeing more of the graphic stuff, the more of the Scott Pilgrim, more, which again, I think is a lot of fun. Yeah, JD, I think it could easily be just a plot convenience. But if it wasn't that weird family mystery thing going on at the same time, I don't know. So, yeah, it just that just strikes me as weird. But so she puts together this whole elaborate plan, and she lies to her parents. She sneaks out, and she grabs the bauble that her nanny had mailed her to just make it part of her costume. And meanwhile, Bruno has made these like photon light up gloves that are awesome. But when she goes to change, she forgets those. I don't think she cares about Bruno. Poor Bruno. Bruno's in love with her. And she doesn't think of Bruno that way at all. She doesn't think about Bruno. No. And she goes in the contest, lights flashing, her powers go off, causes chaos, giant Ant-Man head rolling, Molnor swinging, Blonde getting thrown up in the air. She uses her power, the big stretchy hand catches her. We get the debut of the hero. We then, she ends up racing home. She's lost her bike. I mean, just this whole thing has really been quite a feat. But we get back to home, and there's her mom waiting for her in the bedroom. And it's that total, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed moment. And those are the worst, aren't they? Those are the absolute worst. But so, I mean, that was, and then, but she realizes she's got the power. And even with all that her mother says there, the very next thing we see is her lay on the bed looking at the bauble going, cosmic. Like none of what her mom said mattered to her. JD says, see, the one moment in that scene that interested me was the point where she travels to the upside down, maybe. Yes, there. That's a good point. Where that land is. Now, is that her version of the afterlife? Everybody has their own. We learned that in Moon Knight. We learned that in... that's what the Panther thing is for Black Panther when he goes to talk to his ancestors, the ancestral plane. So maybe that's it, or maybe that's the negative zone. But that would tie into the Kree powers and stuff like that. So we'll get into that. But we're going to go ahead and take another quick break. And then when we come back, we'll talk about episode 2. So we'll turn the spoilers on when we come back, the whole thing. Be right back.
Did you know that every experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out. Twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code. Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. And stick around right after this show. Will be Comics Collectibles with Rex John and AR Comics. And I know that today they've got books signed by Greg Pak, Greg Land, and Kyle Higgins. It's a Nightwing comic with Court of Owl, or the owl from Court of Owls in there, or Talent. That's it, Talent. So you'll want to stick around for that. They got some great books coming up. We are going to throw up the spoiler banner in the warning. Please, Mr. JD. Now, I know we're just getting into this early. The show just dropped last night. Normally, we like to have a little space. But with the fact that both Kenobi and Miss Marvel are dropping on the same night, it's a little tight for schedule. Next week will be the finale of Kenobi, so we'll do it once more. And then after that, Miss Marvel will move to the Thursday slot. So we won't, we'll give you a little more time. But for now, we're going to talk about the episode. And I'm going to try to keep it more general, but there's just some major things that happened. Josh ran off. Good. In this episode, we got a few things that happened that are really important. We got talk of Pakistani and Indian history, which I thought was very interesting and makes me want to look more into that. But it's how the family reacted to that. I'm trying to remember the term for it. It begins with a P. Where they basically, the partition, where they partitioned off India into three areas: West Pakistan, India, and East Pakistan, which eventually became Bangladesh. That there was a lot of refugees going back and forth, trying to get where they belong, and it was just an utter mess and a lot of problems. And there's a story about how her grandmother or great-grandmother got separated from her father as an infant, but was able to get back to him. Her way was guided by a path of stars. So it's like, wait a minute, that sounds interesting. And when we're learning this is at the kitchen table with her family. And she has a flash to somebody reaching out to her, or to a person. So we're supposed to get the idea, yes, that's connected. That event is definitely connected. And there's a lot of history to her great-grandmother, who I guess rumors are everything from she had a lover, she had killed a man. I mean, just all over the place. We also spend a lot more time in the culture this time. We spend more time with her friend. We go to the mosque. We see the difference between the women at the mosque and the men at the mosque, the separation, what they have to deal with. And, a lot of those issues, which is great to see on TV, to see that being brought forward. But we also see her working with Bruno to try to figure out her powers. And I think the most important thing we learn is also a throwaway line. And I say it's a throwaway line because I don't think they really knew how to say it without it sounding corny. And that's when they're testing their powers. And Bruno has an iPad or a tablet that shows the thermal trace of her body. And that when she creates the hard light, which they come to call hard light, it's actually coming out of her and not out of the bangle. That it's emanating, the power source is her, which tells us that the bangle is tapping into her powers, not she's tapping into the powers of the bangle, which kind of goes with my theory, but we'll get to my theory. We are also introduced to a new boy named Cameron, who I guess just joined the school, gets pulled into a party. They go to the party because Kamala just goes goo-goo over this guy. And he's a very handsome guy. I understand. And of course, he does the dive off the top of a building into a pool thing. And of course, we see Bruno getting jealous. But she comes up and he's basically talking to Kamala. He seems very interested in Kamala. And they're at a party that gets raided. And through all of this, Zoe is playing off on the fact that she got saved by this new hero that she dubs Nightlight. And I think that's a play on Night Monkey from the Spider-Man movies. But saved by Nightlight. And is kind of building into a little bit of fame. Well, this, of course, leads to Damage Control coming to talk to her. And the same guy that tried to arrest Peter Parker and do all that is now after Kamala. And, you know, he's a pretty nasty piece of work. And I'm starting to think that there may be more to him than we know. Because if you think about it in Spider-Man, he knew that Nick Fury was off planet during everything going on. Why would someone in Damage Control know what Nick Fury is doing? So I think it's possible that the guy's a Skrull. And the reason I think he might be a Skrull is because I think that Kamala's power source is Kree. I think they're bypassing the whole Inhumans thing and going right to Kree, and that perhaps her grandmother or her great-grandmother who went missing was actually a Kree sleeper agent, you know, who kind of got embedded in with a family. And that her powers come from her Kree lineage, and that bangle is actually a negaband, which is a Kree weapon, kind that Captain Marvel used to use. And if you ever read the original Captain Marvel comic, he had these negabands that would teleport him in and out of the negative zone. And there was another set that he and Rick Jones shared, and they'd have to swap back and forth. So I'm thinking those things are at play here. Are they the exact same? No. And maybe the negative zone here is part of like the ancestral plane. It's possible. But I think they're going to heavily tie her backstory into Kree lineage. Now, in the comics, Cameron is also a hero. Not a hero, but he's an Inhuman as well. And he works for a character named Lineage. Well, we get to meet this woman who keeps popping up in Kamala's visions, who Cameron says is his mother, who Kamala thinks may be her great-grandmother. And if that's the case, then they are definitely connected, you know. And again, they're going off of the Kree thing, which I think also makes a lot more sense. But in this episode, we see them coming up to a big event, Idumambik or something. I know I'm not pronouncing that right, or even probably close, but it's this big event. And her friend is going to use it to try to get on the board for the mosque. And that's an interesting storyline. I think that's another YA component, is they need those grounded stories, those other things going on, where I don't know if we would get that in a straightforward Marvel story, you know. It's like in Moon Knight, we didn't really need to know too much about the security guard at the museum, if he was what his sub-life was going on, or what Debbie at the museum was doing. We just focused on the main story, where this has a lot more subplots, some of which end up tying into the main story, some don't. But I think they're building the universe. We get to see her use her powers again when this idiot kid is trying to do a selfie hanging out a window and falls out, and she has to run up there and save her. And of course, they're all yelling, "Night light, night light." Well, Damage Control has figured out that she's, what nationality she might be. So they're checking mosques in the area of New Jersey City. So they're close at hand when this happens. And of course, they try to attack at the time. And they bring in a squad. It's not like they're going in to talk to her. They're going in to bring her in. So they're bringing in a bunch of soldiers and drones, and it looks like she's under attack. And she's able to get away, partly by using her powers and partly by Cameron showing up at the nick of time. And this is why it's like, okay, this is where we meet Cameron's mother. And she's like, I have been waiting a very long time to meet you. And it's the same woman from her visions. So they're definitely leaning into the whole heritage story. And could this character be lineage? Could this character be their version of that? I think it's possible. I think it's very possible. So, it may just be a gender swap, but it makes sense. And giving Kamala this, because the show is so focused on her lineage from her dad's side and stuff like that, it would make sense that they bring her power in through that as well, through her mom's side. So, yeah, I found that very interesting. I don't think there's other little bits here and there that pop up, but a lot of it is just background stuff, like Bruno gets accepted to Caltech, where he can go off to California for a semester, and he's worried about that. But then, he sees her with Cameron, he's getting jealous. So, there's a lot of those angles in this that, again, we probably wouldn't see in a non-YA Marvel series. It'd be more like Loki or Moon Knight or Hawkeye, where we're focused on the main story. So that's interesting how they're doing that, leaning into it. Yep, you got to have the love triangles. But I thought that was very interesting, and I would have to say that if this wasn't a Marvel series, I don't know if I would be as interested. If I didn't know this character was going to end up in the movies and stuff, I don't know if I'd be as interested. That said, I think it's good. What they're doing is good, but I don't necessarily think I'm the target audience for this. I think it is for younger viewers that eat up this kind of stuff. And I think what they're doing is an excellent job. I think they're absolutely killing it. What is interesting me is the background and lineage stuff, both from her family history and potential Kree history. Both of those I find interesting. The relationship stuff, is Bruno going to be upset? Is she going to, is her friend going to be able to get on the board? What's going on over here? Will she get her driver's license? What's happening with Zoe? That's a little lesser to me. But then that's the kind of stuff you see in the Spider-Man movies as well. Where I'm much, I like Doctor Strange. The first Doctor Strange is probably one of my favorite Marvel movies. It's straightforward, telling a single story. So, different audiences, which is something that's a strength of the Marvel Universe, is that they can do that. JD says, I hit YA stuff later in life and still enjoy it very much. I think I've either gotten used to it or I'm still an emotional mature as a 12-year-old. I'm going to take the fifth on answering that question for you. We're friends and, you run my show. So I'm going to keep it to that. So, all right, guys, I think I'm going to wrap it up there. I think this has been a great start to a series. I look forward to seeing where it goes, where this plays out, how Cameron and his mom fit in, how everything else going on. Hopefully I'll be a little more together with it next week, and we can just focus on one episode. So, but thank you for tuning in. Stick around. We've got Rex and John and AR Comics with Comic Collectibles coming up right after this. And then later tonight at 6 Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, we have Wednesday Warriors with Joey and Ambrosia. So we got a good night here. So you want to stick around for that. Don't forget Champions Comic over at Dynamic Forces if you're looking for that. Look for Karma in the new previews coming up. And we will be back tomorrow to talk about Kenobi Episode 5. I'll see you then. Good night, everybody.
There's a super new way to support your friends over at The Experience. Head over to YouTube and send us a super chat, a super sticker, or a super thanks. We'll be super grateful for your support. And then keep an eye out as we launch membership services over on YouTube. It'll be a great way to get first look access at new content and shows before anybody else. Keep your eyes peeled and make sure you're following us on YouTube.